Hello, everybody. Hello. Thank you for being here. I'm very excited about tonight's session. We're going to talk about energy healing in past lives, which you'd think that we would have done this already because it seems like such a no-brainer in a way, but we haven't. So this is going to be a first for our session, and I'm grateful that you're all here and that we're going to do this. What I'm going to do is give a brief description of what is energy healing for the new people. And then we'll take about 3 minutes of silence and um, go into that deeper inner space where we access all the resources to do energy healing work. And then we'll dive into today's session. Okay, simple. What is energy healing? Energy healing is a process of focusing attention in a way that produces changes or effects at the surface of life. In a nutshell, that's what that is. Of course, obviously, there's more to it than that. And one of the aspects that's just a little bit more is that awareness comes from the ocean of pure awareness, which is the source of creation. And everybody, I'm using my, yay, hi. I'm using my backdrop here as a kind of example or a diagram, you could say, for the way the ocean of consciousness presents itself. That there's down at the bottom, we can use the lower layer here, the deep light color down here to represent the area of the field of creation where all things come, the source of creation. And that is pure awareness. So awareness emerges from the one, the source of creation, and it appears as many, and it shows up as many. And then awareness doesn't stop there. It shows up more concrete, more concrete, more concrete. It gets up to the surface where it's really physical material. You get your physical material objective expression of the intelligence of the creator, right? And then awareness enters into the object. It enters into the point of perception, and then it merges with that. It goes into it deeper, deeper. It examines and understands it deeper, more abstract, more refined levels until eventually awareness gets back to the source of creation again and realizes, oh, really, this whole field of life that we think, this whole diverse universe that we think is so big and so profound is actually just part of the one. It's just the one. It's just one of the ways the one shows up is as this material universe. So the mechanics are in there for how the whole universe is manifested, and the key to creating specific effects at the surface is down here in the gap between the unmanifest ocean of pure awareness and that point where it starts to show up, because that's where like the seeds of manifestation are sown. And so in energy healing, all the work is done down here in the gap. That's the magic spot where energy healing happens. So most of the webinar tonight, we're going to spend down in this gappy area working with this relationship between the unmanifest and the manifest field of creation. In my intention for tonight's session, which is, as I mentioned earlier, on past lives and energy healing, is to support all of us, all of you who are here tonight, and all of us together as a group to gain greater facility over accessing past lives so that we can use that ability to heal in this life. The important thing is this physiology in this life. That's the primary focus, of course, is to bring greater health and healing to us right now. And then through us, support for the whole world, because our whole world needs a lot of support right now. All right. So that's the principle of energy healing. I hope that was nice and clear. We will now go into our 3 minutes of silence. And the reason we do 3 minutes, we take 3 minutes at the beginning of these sessions to just experience the silence deep within the soul is because that silent source of creation, which is deep within all of us, we're like anchored to that. Oh, we are that. Uh, um, that's an infinite resource of wisdom and energy and intelligence and creativity and everything that we need to heal. Because ultimately, everything comes back to uplifting and upgrading the physiology in such a way that life is lived at a higher quality and one can experience and unfold their full potential, fulfill the heart's desires, right? Okay, so that's why we do it. I'm going to just say, ask everyone to close the eyes, and then after 3 minutes, I'll ask you to open the eyes, and I'm going to put my timer on here. There it is. Yeah, and then take a minute at the end to open the eyes slowly, because the more slowly we come out of that silence, the more we bring with us into this level of creation. All right, let's close our eyes, and in about 3 minutes, we'll open the eyes. Thank you. Let's take a minute and then slowly open the eyes. Thank you to the source of creation for being everything and for being all of us in this live webinar and for being the live webinar. And thank you to the eternal tradition of wisdom for being the bridge between the unmanifest ocean of being and the whole manifest field of creation. Thank you for this time that we have together. I hope that we can use it as it's a big privilege for me to be the voice of our collective and to bring out this information in the most orderly and efficient manner that I can. I appreciate your vote of confidence that I'm the one sitting behind the camera and microphone here. Thank you. Um, thank you to each one of you for being here and also shining your light into this area and this topic, because even though I'm the voice, I sure do see better and more clearly when we're all sitting together and there's more light shining in. It's just beautiful. So each one of you is very precious and plays a really important role in the process of these live webinars. And as I mentioned earlier, one of my little personal intentions or goals for the live webinar was to do whatever energy healing we can do to open up the field of perception and your ability to access the information from past lives in order to heal better in the present. So thank you all for being with me. I appreciate it. And thanks for all your feedback. I've got my little comments box right there and I see the volume seems to be better and somebody's sitting there. One of the US is sending love to Melbourne, Australia. So very, very sweet. Thank you. All right. Energy healing and past lives. So one of the reasons that we do energy healing and include past lives is because always in energy healing, we're looking for the seed of the imbalance. And it's not uncommon for the seed to sit somewhere that we can't find it. Because if we could find it, we would have solved the problem already. So past lives is definitely one of the places where we access the seeds of illness or seeds of karma, different influences that can crop up in the present life. And I have always felt that phobias were the byproduct of some past experience, and frequently not in this lifetime. For instance, some people have fear of heights or fear of confined places. And it's not all uncommon for someone who's had some very unpleasant experience in the past, falling from a great height or being enclosed, to come into the lifetime with fear in that area and then not understand why. And that's why we, in this lifetime, we call them phobias, right? Because it's like, it doesn't make sense why a person would have a fear of heights when they haven't ever really fallen from a height and so forth. So, problems like phobias are pretty obvious. I mean, it seems there's an obviousness, there's kind of like an obvious connection. But for some illnesses and problems, for some karmas, there isn't an obvious connection. And that's what I'd like to look at tonight. Is like, how do we get in and make that determination whether some problem that we're having now definitely has a past life connection and if that needs to be addressed or not. So the first thing I want to say is kind of like a disclaimer when it comes to working with past lives. And that is, as I mentioned at the beginning, how there's this mechanic, right? That one ocean of awareness rises up and appears as many, and it filters through. Each one of us are like these sensitive anchors for the ocean of totality to experience its own nature. Each one of us is like an antenna to the universe. And so what we put our attention on is where we have this freedom as human beings, right? We can put our attention on anything we want. So interesting, right? So here's this one ocean of wholeness, and it's showing up as many, and then it wants to evolve through that experience. But as points of connection to the relative, we've been given this autonomy that we have a choice of where we focus our attention, which means we are directing the evolution of totality or wholeness through our individual moment by moment choices. Where we put our attention causes totality to move in that direction. And totality and wholeness is a resource of infinite intelligence and creativity and wisdom and knowledge and all these values. So wherever we focus our attention, we start to bring these like nourishing, life nourishing values to that thing. Why I'm saying that is that when we focus on past lives, we're essentially bringing our awareness in a way that kind of activates or wakes them up. And when we're doing energy healing, that is a good, useful thing to do sometimes. But just for the sake of curiosity seeking, it's not that useful. And the reason is that we've talked about this before in previous discussions, that in the past, the soul was so evolved. And as it moves forward through time, as we progress through the linear unfoldment of time, we evolve. So we're more evolved right now than we ever were in any of our past lives. And one of the values of energy healing is that if there's something going wrong in the physiology now, we want to direct attention in such a way that the effect is drawing the physiology and the nervous system and all the subtle layers of self, the heart and the mind and everything forward into a healthier state. So the purpose of using past lives in energy healing is not to dwell in any way upon the lives. It's not about, as I mentioned, curiosity seeking. It's about finding, identifying the seeds of suffering, and then going after the seeds of suffering. So when we use past lives, when we interact with our own past lives, or we're supporting someone else and looking into their past lives, it's always done in the name of moving forward. And in fact, this brings me to another point about past lives, which I think is very important, which is if we use the diagram back here, that this is the ocean of being, this yellow area, and then this purple, these layers of the purple area, like the layers of the manifest field of creation. Right about where that orange line is right there is what I call the astral level of creation. And that is the area of the physiology that is accessed for the sake of exploring past lives and also ancestors' lives and any other aspects of the environment where the seeds of suffering might have lodged. So at this astral level, and I think I'm just going to pop Harry's picture up here. As long as you guys are here, we're talking astral body. Just if I can remember which picture, so I can come back to this one. There we go. That should be easy. It's the next door neighbor picture. Okay. So this is a drawing from my friend Harry Alto. I've shown it a bunch of times, and I think I've put it in the follow-up email that comes to you with the links, right? But I can do that again for those of you who are new. Could you make a point of including Harry's picture with the links, my love? Thank you. Anyway, yeah, so Harry drew this lovely picture and he said I could share it, so I'm sharing it. So here's if you want to look him up online, he's a very interesting person, Harry Alto. He's done a lot of interviews on Back App and various places. But anyway, this is the little human stick figure guy right here. So this is you. And then all this golden thread area is the web of life around you. And when I looked at this picture, I said, Harry, this looks like the web of life. And this looks like what people look like when we're doing energy healing with them. And he said, oh yeah, this is what it looks like to me too, all the time. And just like, that's what it is. So it's beautiful. It was very validating, you know, that his vision, and as an artist, he was able to depict that very abstract or subtle vision in such a way that I could recognize it. It was very beautiful. But anyway, this area around the body is the area that we usually think of as the astral body. But as you can see in this picture, the threads of this astral body are really intimately connected to the threads that run sort of throughout the universe. And as I think I've mentioned in the past, the astral body isn't sort of stuck. It isn't at all confined by space or time. So all of this is also the astral body. The astral body has the ability to morph and to stretch and to accommodate different situations and circumstances, and stretch out to the horizons or squeeze in if you're on a crowded bus, or, you know, do what you need it to do. All right. Yeah. Shout out to Harry there. Oh yes. So we're sending the recording. Yes. The web of life is where consciousness shows up as threads or streams, and it flows. So we know awareness flows, right? We know that if I'm watching my baby, my little granddaughter grow up, and she does this a lot, right? She's like, that's my hand right there. And it does things. I can like make it go like that or make it go like that. And so there's this stream. You can see the stream. You can almost, right? You can see like my stream of awareness moving into my hand when I do that. And so streams of awareness move everywhere, and they move at infinite speed. And they're certainly not bound by space and time. You can love somebody who is alive, or you can love somebody who's already passed on. There's so many options. So awareness is not bound, and awareness is the tool that we use to access past lives, because past lives exist within the field of the Akashic record, field of creation. And the Akashic record, to me also, guys, tends to look like a great universal size mass of threads of awareness, with all the nodes and all the bits of information sort of knit in like beads in a great knitted fabric, something like that. So I think one thing to do is to take a moment and I want this to be experiential for you guys. So let's just take a moment and feel into the threads of awareness, because we're used to putting our awareness out, right, and focusing on something concrete like the hand, or here's my necklace, I just inherited from my sweet mother-in-law. And you know, we can focus on something concrete, but if we bring awareness in, and sometimes closing the eyes helps with that. That's why we do the silence at the beginning, right? We focus in on the awareness, the field of awareness itself, and my awareness, and the area of my awareness where it moves, like how it focuses and how it perpetuates itself through space and time, then you're finding your way into your own astral body and into that area of yourself where you have access to the whole Akashic record and all the past lives and all the ancestral lives and so forth. So that's why it's good to take a minute just to, like an exercise, right? We kind of feel our way into that. It's useful. It's useful. It's good for this particular webinar. In fact, when we had our moments of silence, I was feeling our collective bringing awareness back to the early beginnings of humanity on Earth. Ooh, well, it was very tribal time, very tribal. For a long time, hundreds of thousands of years, humans lived in tribes, in family collectives and extended family collectives. And life was super simple. And just feeling back to those earliest beginnings of humanity on Earth. We're just taking a moment as our awareness focuses back to the early beginnings of humanity on Earth to honor the entire spectrum, the entire range of the history of human life. It's very precious. And we can see that human life has evolved. Collectively, we've evolved over the course of time. Certainly, life has gotten more comfortable and fancy. Beautiful. I think it's very sweet that we spend a moment right at the beginning of this session just putting our attention to the vast history of humanity on this sweet, beautiful planet and all that the multitudes of generations upon generations each one has contributed to supporting the perpetuation of the race and to integrating the finest qualities that humanity can bring forth, usher forth, like through our DNA, refining the instrument, the human instrument as we go along. So that we're like, we've evolved over a long course of time. Stronger immune systems and, right, the survivors last. Very sweet, very sweet, very important. So now what our awareness, our collective awareness has done is it's sort of embraced the entire field of all humanity. And it's interesting now, it's like as a collective, we're kind of shining this light of our awareness into all of humanity. And also with that, we're shining the light of understanding of what life is like now into this field, this ocean of the past. And believe me, this light is like a light of pure hope for all of the generations that were so many, tens of thousands, hundreds of thousands of years. It's like we create an anchor for the whole of humanity to kind of aim for, and it provides not just hope, but meaning and purpose for humanity, for the perpetuation of century after century, because for so long, so little like technological progress took place, right? And then all of a sudden it's like, oh, there's this potential for humans to live at this like much higher level. It's just really beautiful. I was going to say that along with focusing awareness to the past is also threads also go to the future. because essentially it's not really a linear process, right? It's kind of like a multidimensional process. So as we're shining to the past, we're also shining to the future. And that hope and meaning that's given to the past also reflects into the future and helps to establish patterns that will support our navigation through the difficult period that we're in now. I mean, as nice as it is now, right? We may think, oh, for those who lived, day to day, hand to mouth in some tribal setting, isn't it quite fancy how we live now? But the truth is that we have our challenges. We have our challenges now, and they're different kinds of challenges. And one of the things that happened, obviously, was that the previous generations were able to lean upon each other's body of wisdom because the challenges that they faced were rather similar. And we're up at a time now where everything's shifting so quickly that the types of challenges we face now have not been faced in the past. A lot of them are new. And we have nobody to lean on. We have to create our own solutions. But we have the future of the creation. And as the astral body opens out into the field of the future, multiple threads, like there are all these different pathways and channels, we can select, right, which ones are more useful. And this is where this idea that I was bringing up at the beginning, that we have to be very selective or discriminating on with how we focus attention when we're working with past lives, because we want to always focus the attention in such a way that we're producing an effect for our own human nervous systems that promotes refinement, that promotes increased integration of wholeness or totality in all the parts. That's the aim. That's the evolution of the whole universe, is wholeness integrating into the parts and finding its way back to one, home to home, right? So anything that supports that is good. And dwelling on the past doesn't do that. Because it was a time when that was happening less for each one of us individually, right? But focusing on the future does. And when we're healing, we're looking to heal something in the physiology. Then we're looking to find the seed from the past, and we're looking to find the solution in the present and in the future, and bring them together as a complete package so that the solutions interact you could say they transform the seeds from the past in such a way that those seeds begin to yield new fruits. So we could say, well, that's a little complex. Like, how does one even do that? Like, if you're out there and you're thinking, oh, I'm not even sure I know how to access my past lives, much less do this complicated thing that Dorothy just said of you access the seed and you access the future, blah, 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 blah. It's like, oh, right. So I'm not trying to make it too complicated, but I am bringing these ideas out to you because essentially the way working with past lives supports energy healing also causes increase of flexibility and stability in the nervous system so that you can focus awareness coming from the source of creation up to this astral level. And you can work that area of the focus of awareness, just letting the awareness kind of come and massage into this deeper level. That's why I show the picture. And even we take a minute and we kind of feel into the hearts and souls of our ancestors and give them love and support and hope and vision, and particularly the seed. We offer the seed of the integration of totality, because that's that spark of the highest good that uplifts, right? So it's possible to go back into the annals of time and to find the past incarnations and offer them the vision and the direct experience of awareness being one, and using the points of the many as a launching point for the one to re-establish itself, to find itself again, to come home. So it's like you're helping coming home for the ancestors. And that, to a large degree, yeah, good. I'm glad. So yeah, I'm starting to make sense a little bit there. I know it's a very abstract thing, basically. All right. So suppose you have an issue, and I noticed one person, one anonymous attendee was saying that they have like not just one phobia, but a bunch of phobias. So in a way, phobias, like I'm just looking at them, in a way, phobias are one of the manifestations of fear that isn't coming all the way necessarily to the physical material level, even though I know when a person has a phobia and they're facing the thing that makes them frightened, it feels physiologically, the heart beats faster and they start to sweat and they feel too hot and too cold at the same time, and the fight or flight response kicks in, and the autonomic nervous system and all that stuff. So I realize that there is a kind of a physiological element to it, but when I look at phobias, just energetically, which I haven't ever done in a webinar before, so thank you for bringing that up. It looks to me very much like the way allergies work in the body. And that's an immune system dysfunction, where the body suddenly looks at something that isn't really an enemy, right? Like maybe it's a pollen or maybe some food or something that shouldn't create an allergic reaction, but the body looks at it and labels it, oh, enemy, enemy. And so then it brings out all these systemic responses. And phobias are a little bit like that we're looking at something that doesn't need to be a catalyst for all this, intense fear reaction in the body, but somehow the system is responding to it, but it's subtler. Right? When people have allergies, they're actually responding there's something in the physical material environment that's like kicking off the allergic reaction. But with phobias, it's something not in the physical material environment. It's just the anticipation of something a lot of times, or like, being in a high place, for instance, or an enclosed place. But it's very similar to an immune system dysfunction. And it can happen when the physiology is wired up in such a way that a person isn't supposed to have allergies, or they're working that same premise from a deeper level. So what does that mean? Let's fit this in with our understanding about past lives. A few webinars ago, we talked about this aspect of the evolution of a soul from one life to another, which is that we always feed the new incarnation with the heart's deepest desire from the previous incarnation. And the heart's deepest desire, so you can imagine at the moment that a person passes out of their body, whatever is that deepest, most tender experience deep in the heart area of, oh, I didn't finish something. It's something unresolved, right? Deep in the heart. There's something I needed to do, and now I'm leaving and I'm not going to do it. Right. So then that becomes the seed for the next round, And believe me, when I say heart's deepest desire, it's rarely anything you left like, oh, I didn't finish writing that book, or, oh, I didn't finish my meal, or it's never like that. It's always something that's like really like something that speaks to what those aspects of life that make life really meaningful, usually having directly to do with your evolution as a soul. So, okay, this heart's deepest desire, it evolves over the course of time. So in the very earlier lives, as we were going back into the long ago, the long forgotten past, the long ancient history of humanity, maybe not so forgotten now, right? Because you can kind of feel back viscerally into that past. What we find is that the heart's deepest desire tends to evolve because you'll come into a life with this deep desire and you will fulfill. In our life, we tend to fulfill much of it, maybe all of it. But then when the death comes, there's something deeper that didn't get fulfilled. So that becomes the seed of the next incarnation. And then in the next incarnation, you work on that desire and you fulfill it. And so then when the death comes in that incarnation, there's something deeper, even more refined, even more fundamental, we could say. So it, in a way, you could say the heart's deepest desire gets sort of stripped away from one lifetime to another, so that it becomes this very rarefied, absolutely beautifully refined product toward the end of the cycle of human incarnations. It becomes this just very profound desire that's very much aligned with the intention of the creator. All the heart's deepest desires are aligned to some degree, but I feel that that alignment becomes more and more precise as one moves from one lifetime to the next lifetime. All right, so coming back to the phobias and the immune system, um, what can happen is that in a previous incarnation, that experience, that dysfunction in the immune system shows up in a more concrete way as an allergy. But in that lifetime, the soul works it out. They figure out what's going on with that allergy. And so when they pass out of that lifetime, they're left with just some piece of it, like some flavor of that dysfunction that gave rise to the allergy. And so in the next lifetime, they're working with like a more refined product that instead of showing up all the way to the physical material, it shows up more at a mental, emotional, at a finer level of physiology, like that. All those phobias, when I look at phobias, what I see are underlying them are fear of death. And fear of death, if we look at that and we look at that at a deeper level, we see fear of being separated from wholeness. That most imbalances can be traced back at some point or another to this experience of this dynamic that occurs here in this gap when one starts to show up as many. Of there are certain laws of nature here in the gap that are responsible for the one starting to break apart into pieces, basically, and show up as not one, but show up as a multiplicity of the universe. And so those are laws of nature. And in this diversified level of creation, those laws of nature dominate. If they didn't, we wouldn't have a material universe. So we need those laws of, I call them the laws of separation, right? Because they're giving rise to the one being able to start to show differences. It shows up as, the sky and the clouds and all the different parts, the dark and the light. And here, the back of it's dark back here and it's light right there. It's different. So we need those laws of nature. But the illusion that makes those laws of nature seem like enemies sometimes is the idea that because there are differences, that means there are areas where the home of all things does not exist. Separation, it's not just separation, it's like the illusion of abandonment, sort of being really not just like separate, but separated from totality. And of course, that's not possible because the whole universe came from the one to fullness, the one home of all creation. And so the stuff of which the home of all, the whole creation is made is, of course, deeply enmeshed in all of its diverse expressions. It can be found in every point. And the evolutionary process is found in every point. But there's this there's this place where the laws that are responsible for the separation are so dominating. They're so strong that they overwhelm the senses. That's what it is. They overwhelm not just the senses, but I've seen in a lot of cases, they can overwhelm the mind. They can overwhelm the mind and the intellect. So they overwhelm the part of us which is is mm, exists in that field of differences. They overwhelm the part of us, and the mind is there, and the emotions, and all the senses of perception, and most importantly, this at a very deep level, the sense of self. And it's there when those laws of separation tend to overwhelm the sense of self that we get into trouble. That's where we tend to, it's at that point, and we think of the sense of self as being very close to the ocean of self. We can think of that ocean or that home of all the laws of nature as self with a big S, self, big universal totality, everything that is exists in creation self. And then our individual sense of self is part of that. And so our individual sense of self has this opportunity to stretch a little bit. And that's what behind the phobias is this desire of the one to stretch the sense of self, to open it up so that what we know ourselves to be is never away from the one. It's never away. It's never separate. Death, what is death? Is it really, I mean, it's the physical body no longer having the vehicle of the physical body to kind of engage at this level of creation with the taste of food and the vision of a beautiful sunset and so forth. But different physiologies have different sets of senses of perception, and senses of perception work here at the gross level, but they also work at the finer levels. And I'm hearing this soul of this person say, yes, but it's also survival. It's not just about living, it's about surviving, thriving. It's about surviving and thriving. It's about living well. And it's not just a fear of death, it's a fear of living some compromised level of life. It's the fear of not reaching one's full potential, but living like with so many boundaries and limitations that somehow there's this feeling of, oh, the potential or my heart's deepest desire, it's not going to get fulfilled. And so the threat isn't so much the threat of death in this case, it's the threat of not not experiencing fullness or fulfillment in this life. The fulfillment is born of home. So the field of the source of creation, it goes out into the parts, but that's not the fulfillment. The parts aren't the fulfillment. It's when it comes back home again as a richer, more complete version of itself. That's the fulfillment. That's the resolution right there. So this fear of not having the fulfillment is born of the experience of getting caught at the pinnacle of that cycle, right? It starts out wholeness, it goes up to the point, but then it has to come back again. And it's getting caught up in these areas. And there's some identification of oneself up at the material. Oh, I am this, and I'm a, whatever I do, I'm a mother, or I'm a teacher, or I don't want to, I don't want to name any occupations as if they're not honorable, because all occupations are honorable. But you know what I'm saying? There's some element of what one knows oneself to be getting caught a little bit in the identification with these various roles that we play in the creation, and losing sight of this larger identification with one's true reality, true divine nature, source of creation. So for the ego, it's a healing for ego. And of course, such an imbalance can be carried for multiple lifetimes, right? Because remember, in the past was a lesser state of evolution. So we're already at a higher state of evolution. So for past lives, what we do is, as the ego starts to, it becomes like more pliable, more flexible. We turn our awareness or attention onto who we are. We just like the exercise when we were putting our attention on awareness itself. Oh, well, that was a way of looking at who and what we are in a much more essential form, right? Like we think, oh, this is me. I have my hair is so long and my ears are this shape or whatever. But then if I put my attention just on attention, then I see, oh, well, actually, I am this material out of which the whole creation is created, and it's a very pliable, very flexible, very fluid material. This is what I'm made of. I'm also made of these threads or streams of awareness. So that gift of that redefinition, re-identifying oneself, sense of self here, the ego at this level, re-identification with a larger sense of what one is, can be offered back into the past lives. So we think, oh, well, the past is set, what's done is done. And it's true that at the surface, there are certain measurable experiences that we all went through. Some of us we went through collectively, or we went through as individuals, these experiences. So the actual way that the reality shows up at the surface is said. It showed up the way it showed up. But the way we respond to that and the way we understand it changes. We can upgrade past selves, past lives, past physiologies. We can even heal past physiologies. Like you could say, well, in the past physiology, I had terrible allergies and they followed me for such a long time, but there's a point where the awareness goes back and meets with the past incarnation, whether that's age 20 or 30 or 40 or wherever that point is, that we go back and we meet ourselves. And at that point, giving the download of, oh, what I really am, my true nature. My true nature's very simple compared to this idea that I'm all this, I'm just the physical material. No, I'm really just light. I'm really just the light of being, showing up and being gifted with this material form so that I can be the instrument of divinity to evolve. That's the main thing. So that point where we meet the past life and we address that fear. What was that fear that was causing all those allergies, for example? And just meet the past life there and bring in that download and that richer, more comprehensive understanding that the fear is born of lack of fulfillment and somehow living life under one's full potential, and that the full potential is born of being the vehicle for the one to know itself, to evolve in its own nature. That's what the potential is born of. And so sometimes if we measure, well, I didn't meet my full potential because, my neighbor over there made X number of dollars in his lifetime, and I'm over here and I'm not making that much money, something like that, right? So, gee, bad me, or comparing in any way to anybody. The pattern of comparing, it's washing, because what are we doing? We're shining the light of our awareness on that pattern behavior of comparing to other people and washing it in the light of understanding that the value and the meaning of a human life is not measured by material means. It's measured by this, measured by this cycle of creation, utilizing the vehicle of the human body, utilizing the creation utilizes. And we engage in that process by focusing our awareness wherever we want. And wherever we focus, being evolves there. Interesting, isn't it? So that principle that wherever we focus, totality or wholeness evolves there where we focus. This goes hand in hand with a principle we've talked about in the past. I'm only going to touch on it briefly here. You can check it out on my knowledge base, soma, that soma is the finest byproduct of digestion, and where the awareness flows, where the awareness goes, the soma also flows. And soma, the finest byproduct of digestion, feeds the fundamental intelligence, the universal cosmic intelligence, the devas and the devatas of creation that are responsible for how things show up at the surface. It's a kind of principle of energy healing right there. You might want to rewind and look at that little section again, because there's a little bit something's in there. All right. Okay, I'm checking our time. Let's see. Yes, we started about an hour ago. Man, the time goes fast. I would like to start answering questions. And questions came in the emails. I see we've got questions here. Australia can hear. This is good. Okay, so another anonymous attendee says, yeah, so phobias, okay, but what about like OCD and PTSD and hoarding? Kind of, those are kind of like the opposite of phobias, right? Like in phobias, you're like, oh, get it away from me. And in those OCD are kind of like, it's coming towards you. Well, PTSD, I guess, is a little, those are all really different. OCD and PTSD and hoarding, they have different types of underlying principles behind them. And I think we've worked with PTSD some in our webinars, and I know we've definitely worked with it in our daily remote healing sessions, which is a different offering from the live webinars, but something that's accessible. They come out to like $10 a session. You can check those out, remote healings on my website. Hoarding also can come from past life. It can, in that the hoarding comes from a sense or feeling of not enough, right? And again, there's some lack of desire, fulfillment of desire. Like on some level, I feel like my desires aren't being fulfilled, but at least I can do this. And it's interesting that often people who engage in hoarding also tend to have lower incomes. Isn't that interesting? The people with the most stuff actually have the least money. But yeah, that's a response to feeling like I don't have enough. And it's a little bit, it works a little bit, it's a little bit like OCD. And I will confess that I have this a little bit, that sometimes when I'm dealing with something that's like, feels a lot bigger than I am, like, for example, there was a point was it already 2 decades ago? That maybe not a full 2 decades ago, but maybe a decade and a half, when the US went to war with Iraq. I was so upset. I was so praying it wasn't going to happen, wasn't going to happen, wasn't going to happen. Then it happened anyway. And there was nothing I could do about it. So believe me, I cleaned. I cleaned down to the microbe, out in the public areas of the building. We lived in an apartment building with, public stairwells and things like that. And I was out there just digging away at all that dirt. And I sort of knew that it was sort of an OCD type of behavior going on there, that cleaning, all that stuff. But, again, it was born out of that feeling of like, I'm not able to fulfill my desire in this one area. So I'm going to fulfill my desire in this other area that I have control. I have no control over that. So I'm going to do what I do have control over. And so that's where I think the hoarding and the OCD come in. And again, that sense or that underlying feeling of, I don't have access to what I need to be fulfilled in this life. That feeling is born of the illusion of separation. Because when the anchor is real solid, it's like set down into the source of creation, there's no longer a feeling of I don't have. There's the self knows, not only have, I am all of that. I am all the resource that gives rise to all this expression. I am that. I am that. It's a shift for the ego. It's a shift for the ego. To reestablish sense of self, to know oneself in terms of wholeness. And you also need to know yourself in terms of the individual. And this is where we're honoring with our healing work right now, the past lives, because each past life has its own story, its own individual reality. And on that note, I did want to mention an experience I had when I was pregnant with my beautiful daughter. Very intimate past life experience. I just watched this movie called The Red Violin. I don't know if anybody watched it. It's a lovely movie, actually. Beautiful music throughout the movie about the path that a Stradivarius violin takes from the time it's created all the way to the present day, something like that. And in a way, it's symbolic. The movie is symbolic of past lives because the violin goes through so many different owners and it has these different experiences. It's played in lots of different ways. Oh yeah, other people see it. It's a good movie. I thought it was a really good movie. Anyway, I sat down to meditate, and then all of a sudden, it's like a book opened, and the pages just flipped before me, and I saw probably about 500 to 600 past lives in one shot. I mean, they were like flipping. They were like another and another and another, and like you flip a book full of 500 or 600 pages, and each page was a different life. And because my awareness was in a very quiet place, I was able to glean a lot of information off of that experience that might have only taken seconds. I don't even know how long it took. I was very much feeling unconstrained by time at the time I had that experience. Anyway, I noticed these patterns in past lives. And this is where recognizing patterns, or I guess I'm just going to go with the word, there's a word that starts with an S. Sequences. Recognizing sequences of patterns is useful when we're working with past lives and energy healing, because it helps make sense out of experiences in the present. And it also helps you to find back, if you're looking back into time, to find like the seed of some present life experience that's not going well, something like that. It helps you kind of figure out which is the origin. Where's that original moment when that thing came into my field of expression of who I am and became somehow lodged into the ego, and it became part of who I know myself to be. And because it was part of who I know myself to be, then I was producing the effects at the surface. So some of the patterns that I noticed were that some souls need particular shape of the DNA. They need the DNA to be a particular shape in order to evolve to their full potential. So it's really common for souls to reincarnate in the same ancestral line. And you'll find that, I mean, we're at a point in history now where photography has been around for enough time that we can actually look at photographs of our ancestors going back quite a ways, sometimes 5 or 6 generations, we can look back, and it's very interesting how particular physical traits will skip generations. You'll see, you'll see somebody from the distant past and go, man, that looks like my son. That looks like my son, only like from several hundred years ago. Anyway, so that's one of the things that souls will do, is that they need that shape, they need the DNA to be a certain shape, or the soul is working with that particular type of DNA in order to fulfill its evolutionary needs, right? Like in a particular, we change our DNA through the way we focus our attention, right? We create experiences for ourselves. We focus our attention in a certain way, and that causes the DNA to shift. It causes epigenetic changes. So if a person, for example, every time they smell the smell of a certain flower, it brings their heart joy, then that goes into the DNA and is passed to the next generations. That's that's a real thing. I mean, the scientists, of course, tested it, by putting rats through stressful experiences and see how many generations the rats will pass. The smell of cherry blossoms will elicit a stress response in their offspring, and it's kind of awful how things are tested, but it works both ways. The bliss also works. That if you have certain, like I love rocks, right? Look at this lovely crystal. Isn't that just amazing, right? Birthday crystal right there. Anyway, it's a lovely thing, and it brings me joy. It brings me joy. And I know that my offspring will also glean some joy out of these crystals because just that's just the way it works. So that's part of it, is that we're changing from one lifetime to the next within a particular DNA strand, right? We're refining, we're working with the DNA on Earth and the DNA of humanity to produce a higher product, a higher human product. There's another pattern, and this is that our beautiful Earth has certain areas, like all the different areas of the Earth have their own special energy signature. All the different countries and the lands and the different types of biomes and so forth, they all have these sort of very beautiful, very specified energies in them. And people will absolutely return to certain places on Earth again and again. So they'll either be born there, or they'll travel there, or they'll relocate to that location, something like that. And it's just the nature of humanity, of people, to do that because their soul is like at home. It's at home at some certain place on Earth more than other places. We probably all have special spots on Earth, and some people are definitely more attached to certain places than others. So, some people will be more driven to return again and again to a certain place because they have, when they're in that place, their being gets nourished and it heals, and the epigenetic changes that occur in the physiology and the refinement that occurs in the nervous system is facilitated in that particular area as it interfaces with Earth's intelligence. And I'm sure that that's why over the course of centuries and centuries, temples have been built at certain locations on Earth, because the energy there, it speaks not just to individual people, but it speaks to a lot of people. Anyway, it's very beautiful. Thank you for the question. Can we see the astral level and glimpse past lives in dream state or at the junction point of sleep and waking? Absolutely. Absolutely. Yes. Yes. In fact, it's in dream state that we really have a more facilitated access to the feeling qualities of like different places on Earth, different periods, significant periods in human history. I have 2 family members who have just this like deep kind of burning fascination with ancient Greece. No, excuse me, ancient Rome, and they're like, it's just burning in them. And I never really personally felt like I had such a such a burning fascination with ancient Rome, but these two family members just sort of, it speaks to them. It speaks to them to the point that in this lifetime, one of them is learning Latin and learning to read Latin because he's got to go back and he's got to read all those books in the original language. It's like, okay, it's doing that. So yeah, but dream and sleep state, absolutely. We feel into those spaces. And I would say, if we think of the astral field or the astral level of creation is where awareness moves. It's the point where we start to create these threads of pure source material, and we have this autonomy where we can make them go in places that we want them to go. That in the dream and sleep state, the nervous system functions differently from the way it does in waking state, and so it's a lot the ability to focus awareness in these subtler levels of self are facilitated. So in the waking state, the human nervous system is wired up in such a way that it really favors the laws of separation. It really favors awareness coming out to the more material level. But in the dream and sleep state, the nervous system is wired up so that it's like a mode of functioning in the nervous system that allows the awareness to be less constrained by the laws of separation. And there's just so much more fluidity to the flow of awareness in the dream and sleep state. So much more flexibility and greater facility to explore all these, like if you wanted to say explore a particular time and place in ancient Rome, just as an example, you can go in the dream state, you can go back and you can really dig in and really like extract the a lot of specific information about the feelings that were embedded in that particular moment in time and space. A lot of healing happens in dream and sleep state, purification. Well, this person says they think this happens a lot. They also have lots of hoarding, fear of death, fear of boundaries, oppression. Yes. Oh, threat of non-fulfillment. Oh, so hopefully today's session has helped to address some of that, because I think most of the healing of today address that. Can we do a healing so past lives not overshadow the present life? Well, that's a really good question. And I'm looking at, I can't believe our hour. Am I reading the clock wrong? Or is this an hour and 15 minutes already? Good Lord. Okay, sorry. So it just went really fast. So that's just like such a powerful, beautiful, amazing question. And it needs, I need to, there's a lot of questions came in, you guys. I love you. Thank you for the amazing questions. So what I'm going to do tomorrow, as I sometimes do when we get a topic like this that really activates a lot of questions. Plus I had questions come in on the email too, which I didn't get a chance to address. I think I may have addressed some of them at least a little bit. Is I will start out tomorrow answering questions, and we will just go question to question to question. And it's a very nice way to run the webinar, because often that'll be a healing to another healing to another healing like that. So thank you for the amazing questions, for being with me at this blip of time. I'm looking forward to seeing most of you tomorrow, and those who can't make it to tomorrow's session, don't worry, you'll receive the recording usually by the end of the day for us here in Arizona. So you'll have it a few hours after we actually record the session. And I hope that it's really interesting and helpful and useful. And may you find that working in this astral level of your physiologies and accessing the seeds of illness from the past much more easy as we move into the future. All right, thank you. See you soon.